To say that the past year has been one of great tragedy is an understatement. And here at the Washington Institute, we experienced our own profound loss with the passing in early January of one of our dearest colleagues. Dr. David Pollock, the first senior fellow to pass away in the history of our organization.
I met David about 40 years ago in September 1984 on the 7th floor of Coolidge Hall in Cambridge, Massachusetts, the home of Harvard's Center for Middle East Studies. I was in the second year of a master's program, and David was a visiting professor, having received his Harvard doctorate several years earlier. David was a terrific teacher with a generosity of spirit and an infectious curiosity on so many things. Almost 25 years later, after giving up the academic life for a career in government, first at the now defunct U.S. Information Agency and then at the State Department, I was fortunate to return the favor by offering David a job at the Washington Institute.
This was a great coup for us because in those intervening years, David made a name for himself by doing something that no one had ever done before. He conceived and implemented the first ever public opinion polls in 10 different Arab countries. From deep inside government, David was offering insights no one else could offer. From accurately predicting close elections to giving officials real-time data on what Israelis and Palestinians were thinking about the Oslo Accords. Buried in David's own resume from those days is this modest line: research findings were regularly presented at the highest levels, including directly to the president.
For the past 17 years, David was a fellow of the Washington Institute. After more than 2 decades in government, he was bursting with things to say, things to do, things to write, and to do all that in the multiple languages in which he was conversant, including Arabic, Hebrew, Turkish, and Kurdish. This was a huge win for us in that we were thrilled to benefit from his energy, his creativity, his policy and academic entrepreneurship as he directed 3 major projects: our Fikra Forum, the Washington Institute's presence on the web in Arabic, and our public opinion polling in Arab countries.
Underlying these efforts was David's mastery of languages, especially his love affair with Arabic, and his willingness and even delight in jousting with Arab journalists and analysts on Arabic television. David became a staple fixture for audiences of Sky News Arabia, Al Hadath, Orient TV, DW Arabic, Al Arabiya, Al Jazeera, Al Hura, and a number of other Arabic channels. And he relished translating American policy into the language of millions in the Middle East on these programs.
David was perhaps our most versatile scholar. Peace process, check. U.S.-Israel relations, check. Kurdish-Turkish politics, check. Democratic activism across the Middle East, check. Middle East polling, check. Up until his final days, David was still making the news with his polls. Indeed, his very last poll, you can see up here, on Saudi public opinion in the Gaza war, even earned its own story in the New York Times in December of 2023.
David's boundless optimism, his funny and often corny humor, and his thoughtful comments on his colleagues' work were all the defining features of who he was. And I stand here today because he took the job of mentoring the next generations of researchers very, very seriously. He taught me how to best collaborate with our contributors at Fikra Forum, how to frame questions for our pollsters, and most of all, how to appreciate the value in views other than my own. The legacy of his guidance will continue to inspire the dozens of young professionals who worked with him for decades to come.
So, on behalf of all of his friends and colleagues, on behalf of all those who learned from him, who laughed with him, who adored him, I want to say thank you to David's wife, Judy, and to one of their two children, Max, who are with us here tonight. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your husband and your father with all of us. Thank you.